stand, the flag is in the back. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
None.
All right. We're moving on to consideration of the minutes.
They should be included in your packet, and if there are any errors or omissions, I recommend approval as written. So
Motion, or did somebody second it? Oh, second. All those in favor?
I'm abstaining, wasn't present.
All right, so the next part of our meeting will be public comment. I'm just going to go over some basic rules. In order for the board to have time to hear the public and address other matters, we'll be setting aside a half hour for public input. We'd like to hear from the largest number of people possible, so please limit your comments and try not to be redundant. If you're going to speak, we ask that you identify yourself. Try to be brief, not repeat yourself. We know discussions of school-related issues can get emotional, but please remember our children are watching and we're all neighbors, so be civil. Speakers should direct all comments to the board. This is an opportunity for the board to listen. It is not a public debate or a conversation, so the board does not have to answer your questions. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members or students, although we care about those concerns. Those are personnel matters, and those can be directed to Mr. Stoneton. Couple other things. Those might have been it. Yeah, just remember, we can't talk about matters with specific children either, including your own children. So we need to stick to policies and procedures. All right, public comment.
My name is Erin Legacki. I have two comments, one from the mother who wasn't able to be here tonight, and then one from me. The mother says that she suggests a biannual or annual social media and internet safety training, perhaps once a year for parents and kid education session in the evening, in addition to assembly during the day. And then number two, a proper investigation procedure put in place if things like cyberbullying happen so that the school has a thorough process to look into it and understand what has actually happened before anyone is unfairly bullied. And my comment is that according to Maine state law, it is the dissemination of policies, section 6, underneath the section of education. Each school board shall annually provide written policies and procedures adopted pursuant to subsection 5 to students, parents, volunteers, administrators, teachers, and school staff. The policies and procedure must be posted on the school administrative unit's publicly accessible website. Each school board shall include in its student handbook a section that addresses in detail these policies. And this has not been done, at least within the few years that I have been active in the school.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And
I also have a comment.
Sure.
I actually have a letter that was written by my sister-in-law, Michelle Roberts. I will say that while it's not redundant, it is a little bit lengthy, and I think it also reflects my family's values. So I'll read it from her comments here. So, hi, my name is Michelle. As much as I wanted to be here this evening, I have a prior obligation that I have to be at, so thankful Ray has opted to read my comments to the public. I'm a resident of Orrington. I own a business in this town. I'm part of the Orrington Recreation Board. Volunteered numerous hours in the classrooms at CDS. My favorite of all is I have two daughters that have gone through pre-K to 8th grade at Center. Although my girls are no longer attending this school, my husband and I are very active in the community. We were very satisfied with CDS throughout the years our children attended. Was it all 100% what I wanted or expected? No, but what I've done from the beginning and continue to do so is be involved and have good communication. 347 students currently are enrolled in the 25 to 26 school year from grades pre-K to 8th grade. Approximately 147 kids registered for soccer and Orrington rec this season. We had a handful of our normal guardians step up to volunteer coach, but once we were able to set teams and start date came around, that handful was not enough for 147 kids. We had to send out multiple emails begging families to volunteer. It came down to emails being sent stating families wanted to step up if they want their children to be able to play. Thankfully, a handful more families came forward and said they would coach together. My point is that we desperately need our community to get involved. A school isn't just a building, it's a community with multiple parts. And for that community to thrive, everyone must work together with open minds and shared purpose. It's not about one person's ways, it's about learning from each other, supporting each other, and growing together. Remember that you can't truly be involved if you don't have an open mind. Real collaboration means being willing to listen, to adapt, and to accept that other perspectives have value too. A strong school community doesn't happen by accident, it takes time, commitment, and a shared vision. Our school administration puts in countless hours behind the scenes to make sure everything runs smoothly, from scheduling and safety to supporting students, family, and staff alike. Their work often goes unnoticed, but it's vital. They are not just making decisions, they are building a foundation for all of us to succeed. So as we talk about working together, having open minds and supporting one another, let's also take time to appreciate and support the incredible time and effort our administrators dedicate every single day. Let's show gratitude not just in words, but in how we engage, by listening, being patient, and part of the solution. Sometimes it's easy to feel like we don't have all the answers, but the truth is we can't always know every detail, especially when it comes to the sensitive matters involving students, staff, or families. That's because there are confidentiality laws in place that protect everyone's privacy and dignity. Our school administration is often faced with difficult decisions, many of which can't be explained in full due to those legal boundaries. That doesn't mean the work isn't being done or care isn't being taken. It means we need to trust the process, support those doing the work, and understand that not everything can be public knowledge. When we keep this in mind and we lead with empathy and trust, we can create a more respectful and supportive school environment for all. Back to the Orrington rec, having 147 participants but not enough coaches to support them, a clear sign that we need more community involvement. Every day, teachers face the challenge of limited family support and must juggle far more than just lesson plans. On top of that, they often endure hateful comments on social media, which only adds to their already heavy load. Support for our students must be a shared responsibility both in the classroom and at home. Let's take a moment to recognize and appreciate the fact that 347 students have dedicated teachers, administrators, guiding them through their educational journey. That's something we should be thankful for and something we should all work together to strengthen.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to old business. So our first, presentation. Oh, the RISE program.
We have a presentation tonight. Some of you will remember Jill Hunter shared last spring, I believe, and again in the fall of our first meeting about our new program for our pre-K students. Child development services are being taken over by our schools, and we opted to become a cohort or two. And Kaylee Anderson is our new RISE teacher. Kaylee was our middle school 5-8 special ed teacher last year, and she opted right close to the end of the summer to become our RISE teacher. And these two women have worked furiously over the summer, unloading boxes and putting together furniture, countless things. So we're going to take a field trip down so that you can see the new program.
You're all welcome.
Come to my classroom, please. I worked really hard. It's a really happy place. And I can't wait to tell you all about it when we get in there. On the wall.
I fight for them too.
You know you're welcome to join.
I don't want to, but thank you.
No, I went to the place in River Hannaford, but I think I'm gonna be all done anyway. I'm just gonna let them grow out. Yeah. No, because I had seen them right. I was like, oh my God, I need hospitalized. So I don't know what they're doing either. I really should have thought about that before this.
You just shut down.
All right, so apparently, am I on? Yeah. I am. Okay, apparently now we're moving on to old business. So we're gonna review a couple policies.
Yep. So you should have JE, student attendance, KLGA, relations with school resource officers and law enforcement, and KLGAR, relations with school resource officers and law enforcement authorities regulations, including your packet. You had no changes last time, so barring any questions, I would recommend approval of this.
Motion to approve. Second. All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right, and then, so that was
Yeah.
all of this. So we're gonna have a presentation on our JICK bullying policy.
Yep, so we've invited Michael Busher here. He's a lawyer for Drummond Woodson's, been there for 20 years. Anyways. We're not that we're keeping track, and he's well versed in this, so we've invited him here to talk about giving the community concern around that policy. So,
You guys mind if I pull up the end?
You
Please,
pull up wherever
Very
you
much.
like.
Your microphone never had, right?
Yeah, I don't need a microphone unless you tell me that I do, although I am on the tail end of a head cold, which my middle school boys brought home to me. Thank you all. I travel around the state. I actually live in Rockport, so don't hold it against me. I do work with school boards everywhere. I work with administration. I work with students. And one of the things that I see a lot of are sort of what goes on in schools around policy making and how that gets implemented. So I won't take up much of your time tonight. But first I want to say thank you to you all for doing this. What Jim knows is that I am one of those people who is sometimes in very difficult school board meetings, and I just want to say that you're all awesome. But realistically, as school board members, you know, and maybe some of you have done sort of trainings with me, that you have multiple hats here, right? So you got the hat of being a community member, where you're all at some point presumably maybe parents or involved in schools, right? And then when you're here, you've got these different things to do with school board members, right? The biggest thing that you do is you come up with these policies that work for your local community, and the other thing you do is you come up with a budget, right? So that's sort of like the policy budget thing. But then you've got this other hat that you wear, which is the sort of like the not so fun student discipline hat, right? And then you've got the last hat that you wear, which is you as an employer, right? Everybody who works for the schools ultimately, they are employed by the school, right? So that's a lot of stuff. When it comes to policies, though, you're fortunate that in general you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? The Maine Department of Education, they put out certain policies. NSMA puts out policies. Drummond Woodson puts out policies. You try to look and find a policy somewhere, right? But the cool thing about being on a school board is that you then get to take those things and to make them your own, to make sure that they work for your community, right? Because whatever they say in Augusta at some point, that's all good, right? But ultimately, you have to practice to hear. So that's what you do, right? So you just approved several policies that fit for what you guys need. One of those policies that you have to have is JICK, and that talks about making sure that we have one policy that says we don't put up with bullying inside the building in our schools, right? Everybody be on board with that. But also that you have a process and procedure for how, when you get those complaints, that you sort of investigate those and understand what's going on. And as a board, you put that policy in place, but then you make sure that your administrators are trained to otherwise go and do those things. Because remember, you've got a policy hat, but you don't have a go to school and run school hat, right? So in this case, you have a policy, JICK. I've looked at your policy, I've looked at the model Department of Education policy, I've looked at our religion policies, and your policy complies with the statute. And for those of you following along at home who just want to go and look up statutes, it's 28 MRSA 6554. It is simply. What that statute does, right, is it says that you have to have this policy, and then it has things that need to be in it, right? And that statute also says that the Maine Department of Education is supposed to put out a model policy, which they did, you go on their website. But then once you get your version, you have to make it work for you, right? So your policy at this point has all the parts that it needs to, right? It doesn't use exactly the same words as that model policy, and that's okay because you're not trying to be the Department of Education review. But what it does is it says very specifically, we don't tolerate bullying in our schools, right? And we have a process for how people can report those things to us. There are multiple forums that do that, right? And then our administrators are trained on how to otherwise respond to those things. The board's role in that is actually very limited, right? Because you put that policy in place, but then you have our superintendent to then talk to the administrators to make sure that those things are going on in school, right? And one of the things that policy has is an appeal, right? And what the statute says is that you have to have an appeal process, and that appeal process needs to be consistent with the other appeal processes that you have in your policies, and it may include an appeal to the superintendent. So your policy has that, right? But sometimes I get that question, okay, well, how come the policy doesn't say you can appeal to the board, right? And remember what I said about those multiple hats. You as a board do have a role for student discipline, right? And it's one of my least favorite things to have to do with boards, right? Hopefully you have not had to go through an expulsion hearing, given that you guys are K through 8, right? You're very limited. Remember at this point, the legislature has actually said that we can't suspend kids who are from 5th grade and below. We certainly can't expel them, so you have a pretty limited window. So it's good that you have it done. But ultimately, that is something that by statute, school boards have to do. And one of the questions that we get asked if you ever have to do an expulsion hearing is, can you be impartial? Can you otherwise hear this based on the information that you have? So if you as a school board were to essentially hear every appeal of any discipline that goes on in school, it would be really hard for you to then do that part of your job, right? This the job of the statute says you have to do. And quite honestly, it would take up all of your time because I love that we talk here about all the positive things, but everybody knows that there are negative things about school too, right? Ultimately, we have discipline issues in case of other things that are going on. And every one of those is handled appropriately, but if every one of those then came to the board, you guys would never get that policy work. You would never set a budget. Not saying that you couldn't choose to do that, right? Because remember what I said at the beginning, it's your policy, right? So if you wanted to do that, you could. I think you have to order a lot of pizza. And I think ultimately, you'd find that you weren't getting the rest of your work done. So one of the things that I always try to encourage boards to do, and I think you guys will do a really good job of this, is to delegate where it makes sense to delegate, right? And you've got the superintendent, you've got principals here who is managing these things for you. And look, if there's ever a time where you don't think they are, then you got to talk to them, right? We mentioned, well, that's what you're not getting people with. But otherwise, I think it's really important that you make sure you give yourselves the space to do the rest of the work, because these meetings can be long no matter what. So when I did look at the policy, I see at this point that all of the elements you need are in place. You use some discretion, you don't have exactly the same word as the MDOE policy, but that's okay. That policy essentially just tracks the statute. And ultimately, you are providing the policy as required, right? You're sending out links to parents. It's on your website. I looked this morning. And you do have a process, right? And so when things are going on, parents are willing to assist in the process, right? Look, I wish we didn't have to deal with as many bullying incidents as we use for it. Like I said, I've got 2 middle schoolers and a senior, which is weird. And I hear about things that are going on in schools. I don't envy the work that administrators and teachers have to do sometimes because, quite honestly, since COVID, things are a little different, right? But as far as your policy goes, you've got the right tools, you've got the right people to do those things. So the message is thank you. Anybody have questions for me about the policy?
So, can I ask a question? Is that okay?
You can ask it there and then. I'm sure I'll answer.
So I guess my question is when it was talked about that we need to provide copies of these policies to parents, we don't need to mail a copy to every parent, putting it in our newsletter at the beginning of the year and having it posted online is sufficient.
That works for me. I mean, I'm no legal expert, but.
And the handbook.
But the way I always look at these things, right, is it's important that you make sure that people have access to the information, right? So it's on your website. It is being sent out either in a newsletter, a lot of schools do it that way. Some schools send out an email at the beginning of the year that includes links to all these relevant things. All that is fine. The idea is you want to make sure that people have access to it. They know what it is. There's a form that goes with it, right? And I haven't looked at your handbook, but I'm assuming that that information is in the handbook. So yeah, it's a great question. And it's same thing. Like even though I don't like technology, I embrace it. You just won't find me on TikTok, but ultimately that is how we communicate with people. It's great.
I would say there is also some work being done behind the scenes that should roll out soon that will consolidate all that information into a tab, which is something that had been requested before. So I'm not sure that, yeah, okay. So thank you, Frank, for doing that. So that is something that had been discussed at prior meetings, and we have implemented that. So it should be easier for people to locate.
Yeah. And I will say, having looked at lots of school department websites and things, yours is very easy to navigate. And when I went to the more menu and dropped down, the bullying is actually one of the headers that's right there. So yeah. I didn't have the issue locating them. So.
Does the board have any further questions?
Thank you.
Well, you did a great job because I, didn't understand the legal jargon, but you made that very clear and concise and very easy to understand, which is much appreciated. Yes. You're a good presenter. You're able to break down the material and present it in a way that's easy to understand. Yes, we appreciate that.
I learned that every time I know.
Don't let him lean down.
I'm like, I've talked to him.
Well, thank you all. If you don't mind, I am going to go jump back in my truck.
Yes, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, I always had them on Center Drive by the railroad tracks.
I was coming out of Livermore Falls a couple weeks ago, and so, for me, I know. But in my old truck, I actually hit it. And so this time now, it's always like to drive, but I don't actually drive fast. Much of my kids.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on to new business, the bill warrant.
I have it back.
All right, and then we're going to move on to JKAA.
So, yep, JKA and JKAR, both physical restraint. What you'll note in there, and I sent it to you in my letter as well, is that if you look at the policy, we want to go to paragraph 2. Essentially, what it changed was to a physical escort instead of a temporary touching or holding. The temporary touching or holding used to be voluntary, and what that does is reduce your requirement to file for a restraint, because it used to be a restraint, and that's just a practical application, which is good for schools, so that as you temporarily move a student, it's not considered a restraint, you're just moving them forward.
Okay.
That's your only change to the whole policy and the regulation. I would take any questions you have on that, but that is your one section.
That makes sense, yeah, motion for sure.
Second. All those in favor? Okay, and then JKAAR.
So that was included.
Oh, that's included, sorry. All right, we'll move on to reports. Judy?
You have our report. The two things I would highlight is that we had an amazing start to our year. Sports are in full swing, clubs are in full swing. We have Sci-Fi Club, Harry Potter Club, Gamers Guild, Chess Club, Yearbook. There's so many opportunities for our kids, and they're all very, very busy doing things. So that's been great for our school. We had a presentation, I think I alluded to it at the last meeting that was coming, and we had a detective in here with his dog Doc, who was amazing, and it's an online thing called Net Smarts, NETSMARTZ, and it's a presentation on different things with online safety. We have with our middle school kids, we have our 5 and 6 together, and then our 7 and 8 together, and then we are in the process of scheduling for our K4, because there's K4 programs as well. Any questions for me?
I don't think so.
33 Kers, huh? I was looking at your student
All right, Sharon?
You have my letter in your packet. In the letter, I touched upon our athletic season, of course. We have a new book study that we're doing, best practices at Tier 2 with staff. We've already had one meeting. But the one thing I want to highlight that is, I think, one of my favorite new additions to this year is every morning, most mornings, I'm in the gym with middle school. We do announcements and everything. We have just like a mini assembly every day. And this year, we're really doing more purposeful shout outs to staff and students for things that we're noticing that are positive, just little positive happenings, random acts of kindness, things like that from the students, but also from the staff. Because staff, of course, are the role models for the students. So here are some great things the staff are doing, for example, too. And then I expanded it to for students also to share out if they're noticing other kindness from other students. And so we've had some students that have shared out some shout outs about their peers. Just things like noticing when somebody, like maybe their backpack spilled or their books fell or whatever, and somebody comes and helps them, things like that. Somebody's held the door, the smiles and the thank yous and the good mornings and things like that. And kids are noticing about other kids, and they're talking about it in front of everybody, and I think it's amazing. That is awesome. Any questions from me from my lab?
Well, what is, this has come up a couple times tonight, so what is Tier 1 and Tier 2?
So there are, through MTSS or the like RTI, process response intervention, there are different tiers, the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And so Tier 1, and it's for academic or behavior, it's for everybody, it encompasses everybody. So when we talk about Tier 1 academics, it's what are you doing in the classroom so that to provide supports for all students for their varying needs still, but it's for everybody. And then the book study we're doing this year is for Tier 2. So that's talking about some supports that go in beyond what you're doing in the classroom, so some additional supports. And it's not meant to be instead of, it's meant to be in addition to whatever you're receiving in the classroom or whatever everybody else is already receiving. Maybe you need something a little bit different in addition to it to help support your needs.
Okay, and then Tier 3?
And then Tier 3 goes even beyond that.
Okay.
So something even further beyond, sometimes like think through special education program, things like that.
And these are like, that's standard teacher lingo?
Pyramid.
Okay,
It
yeah.
is teacher lingo.
Okay.
It is teacher lingo,
Yeah.
We like to have all the
Or-
acronyms
yes.
on there.
Okay.
Yeah, discuss it at our PLC.
I mean, I know what a trauma tier 1 response is and a trauma tier 2 response is. All right, thank you. And then Jill?
I mean, I don't have to say too much, you have to saw.
Yes.
A lot of our focus initially had been getting that up and running, getting the kids here, and staff, making sure we have the right people to meet the needs, and that's not just in that room, it's across all settings, but it's been remarkable. And I think for a lot of people, it's a very, very happy place to go and visit with kiddos. That wouldn't be here without this program.
Well, and I think, that not everybody knows, I mean, this is Jill's first year in this position, so this was also, we really appreciate the effort you had to put in. And it definitely will make your first year memorable.
It's ingrained.
Hero?
So I think the only thing I would echo is thank you to Kaylee and Jill for what they've done because of the program, and I think it's made a significant difference in our children and their ability to access everything. We've covered everything else for the course of the agenda except personnel, and I will do that next. Barring any questions.
I did go to the Brewer meeting last night.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. The only big thing that they talked about last night is they're looking at, and I can't remember if it's second quarter or second trimester, but they're actually looking at going cell phone free. So the kids would either have to leave their cell phones in their vehicles or drop them off in the office. So it's kind of an interesting, from a board perspective, they already have a policy in place, so kind of what he was just talking about. So they brought it up in the board meeting, public could comment, but it's actually the administration deciding how they want to enforce that policy. Yeah, so the board has already voted on the policy, that's not up for review. And it's really just an FYI, but there were certainly some strong feelings about that. So more to come on that. And other than that, I think pretty standard meeting. They're on track budget-wise, which is always good. Yeah. All right, and then we'll move on to personnel. So
we're doing them individually or together?
Together.
All right, so these are all appointments. Michelle Brown at Tech 2, Victoria Lander Torrey at Tech 1, girls basketball A and B, Jordan Charpentier, boys basketball A and B, Brian Grant, not Brain, but. And if you know Brian, it's
I'll send him a picture of it.
Oh, no, I'll call him.
Resignations,
None.
executive session. Any other public comments?
Okay, you know I'm happy.
Okay.
As I sit here and look at these tables, I realize that Judy is the only one who had a child that I have not taught.
And was that by design?
Cool.
Was that by design?
You must have just missed Nick.
Yeah.
He just wasn't in my class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cindy Stevens had him, and I had your girl during COVID for a hot second, so I'm happy. But I'm also getting it next year. That's awesome.
So should we start calling you John?
No. But I had a student address a letter to me as, hi, Miss Johnny.
My office right down the hall. Come on down.
All right, so our next meeting is Wednesday, October 8th. Oh, no, sorry, that's the
That's the
AOS.
AOS, and then November.
And then November. Okay. Adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.